Limited aid allowed into Gaza to help Israel expand ground operation. And also Joe Biden diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer. Hello and good afternoon, and Salam Malaysia Badani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brendan Lepal. Israel will allow a basic amount of food into the Gaza Strip after facing mounting pressure to lift a total blockade imposed more than 2 months ago. The announcement came hours after the military said it had begun extensive ground operations in a newly intensified campaign in Gaza. Israel says it will allow a limited amount of aid into Gaza, but it's not clear when the supplies will enter the enclave. Benjamin Netanyahu's office said it came at the recommendation of the Israeli military in order to help them with their expanding operations inside of Gaza in order to defeat Hamas. The Israelis have been blockading all humanitarian assistance since the 2nd of March, which includes food, water, medical supplies and fuel. On the ground, Gaza Health Ministry said all public hospitals in the north of the territory were now, quote, out of service after Israeli forces besieged the Indonesian hospital. It said the Israeli occupation has intensified its siege with heavy fire around the Indonesian hospital and its surroundings, preventing the arrival of patients, medical staff and supplies, effectively forcing the hospital out of service. At least 3,193 people have been killed since Israel resumed strikes on 18 March, taking the war's overall toll to 53,339. Russia launched its largest drone attack on Ukraine since the start of the war, destroying homes and killing at least one woman. A day before US President Donald Trump is due to discuss a proposed ceasefire with Russia's Vladimir Putin. The Ukrainian Air Force said that Russia had launched 273 attack drones and various types of imitator drones, of which 88 were destroyed and 128 more went astray without negative consequences. Meanwhile, the Russian military said it had intercepted 25 Ukrainian drones overnight and on Sunday morning. Moscow also claimed it had captured Bahate, another village in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk region, as it intensifies the war effort despite the Istanbul peace talks. Both sides deny targeting civilians in the war, but thousands have been killed in the conflict, with the vast majority of them Ukrainian. Former US President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has spread to his bones. A statement from his office said Biden, 82, was diagnosed on Friday after having experienced urinary symptoms. According to the statement, Biden and his family are reviewing treatment options with doctors, adding the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. US President Donald Trump, who has long derided political rival Biden over his age, demeanor and cognitive abilities, said he was saddened by the news. According to the American Cancer Society, 1 in 8 men in the United States diagnosed with it over their lifetime. While it is highly treatable if discovered early, prostate cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death in men. Biden left office in January this year as the oldest serving U.S. president in history and was dogged by questions over his health and age for much of his term. Biden was forced to drop his re-election bid in July last year after a disastrous debate against Trump in which fears about his decline and cognitive abilities came surging to the fore. Bucharest Mayor Nicusor Dan won a tense rerun of Romania's presidential election on Sunday with a vote seen as crucial for the direction of the EU and NATO member bordering war-torn Ukraine. The ballot came 5 months after Romania's constitutional court annulled an election over allegations of Russian interference. Dan gained close to 54% of the vote, while US President Donald Trump admirer George Simeon secured some 46%. Turnout was close to 65% compared to 53% for the 4th May first round, in which Simeon secured most votes. Romania's president has significant sway in foreign policy, including holding veto power at EU summits. EU chief Ursula von der Leyen congratulated Dan, vowed it would help work towards a strong Europe. Despite exit polls showing Dan ahead, far-right leader Simeon said he had won the election but eventually conceded defeat to his rival. The new president will have the power to appoint a new prime minister. Meanwhile, thousands gathered in the center of Bucharest, holding Dan posters and waving Romanian and European Union flags to celebrate the nail-biting victory. Meanwhile, in Portugal, incumbent centre-right party won the most seats in the country's 3rd general election in 3 years, but again fell short of a parliamentary majority. The outcome threatens to extend political instability in the NATO and EU member state as the bloc faces growing global trade tensions and works to strengthen its defences. Near-complete official results showed that Prime Minister Luis Montenegro's Democratic Alliance captured 32.7% of the vote in Sunday's poll, with the Socialist Party and Chega virtually tied in 2nd place. That would give Montenegro between 85 and 96 seats in the 230-member parliament, short of the 116 required for a ruling majority. The election, the 3rd in as many years, was called just 1 year into the minority government's term after Montenegro failed to win a parliamentary vote of confidence in March. China slapped duties of up to 75% on imports of plastics from the United States, European Union, Taiwan and Japan on Monday, following an investigation into alleged dumping. The new duties target imports of polyformaldehyde copolymer, a common plastic used in car parts, medical devices and household appliances. Beijing Commerce Ministry said the levies will range from 3.8% to 74.9%, adding that they would come into force today. The new duties come just a few days after the United States and China slashed sweeping tariffs on each other's goods for 90 days, a temporary de-escalation in a brutal trade war that has roiled global markets and international supply chains. Beijing has frequently launched anti-dumping investigations against countries with which it has broader trade disputes. In April, it slapped anti-dumping measures on EU brandy, hitting France's export-reliant cognac industry. Canada has temporarily paused some counter-tariffs against the United States. However, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne on Sunday pushed back against claims they have all been quietly lifted. The news came as Prime Minister Mark Carney and US Vice President J.D. Vance discussed trade in Rome after they attended the inauguration Mass at the Vatican for Pope Leo XIV. According to a readout from Carney's office, they spoke about immediate trade pressures and the need to build a new economic and security relationship. Vance, in a brief statement, called it, quote, a casual meeting about their two nations' shared interests and goals, including fair trade policies. Carney had pledged to stand up to US President Donald Trump and slapped counter-tariffs on billions of dollars of imports from the United States in response to US tariffs on Canadian goods. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre accused Carney of having quietly dropped retaliatory tariffs to nearly zero without telling anyone. Canadian Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne called those assertions falsehoods. He added that Canada has launched largest ever counter-tariff response, including $60 billion of tariffs on end-use goods, with 70% of those tariffs are still in place. And still ahead, building fire kills 17 in southern India. Stay with us. At least 17 people died after a fire ripped through a building in the Indian city of Hyderabad. The large blaze broke out early morning in a 3-story building which houses a jewelry store. The Fire Disaster Response Emergency and Civil Defence Department in southern Telangana state said they had received a call for help just after 6 a.m. local time. The fire broke out on the ground floor and spread to the upper floors. With firefighting, search and rescue operations were carried out simultaneously. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed his deep grief over the loss of life and announced compensation of around $2,300 to the next of kin of each victim. Fires are common in India due to poor building practices, overcrowding, and a lack of adherence to safety regulations. Thousands of people protested against mass tourism in Spain's Canary Islands, urging authorities to limit the number of visitors, protecting local residents from soaring housing costs, traffic congestion, and overburdened services. Marching under the banner, Canaries have a limit. Demonstrators took to the streets in all of the archipelago's main islands and in several cities in mainland Spain.
No estamos en contra del turismo, eso tiene que quedar claro. El turismo es una fuente de ingresos y es un pilar de la economía canaria, pero el modelo actual está siendo depredador contra el medio ambiente y los recursos naturales, que son tan escasos en la isla. Entonces, lo único que pedimos es una revisión del modelo turístico y esperamos con esto que el gobierno tome alguna posición.
According to official data, more than 1 million foreign tourists visit the Canary Islands each month, compared to a local population of 2.2 million.
Es necesario salir a la calle porque ya hay mucha masificación de turismo, no tenemos ninguna zona que sea exclusiva para los canarios, todo se está haciendo en relación al turismo y bueno, pues queremos reivindicar un poco eso, el que haya un poquito más de tranquilidad, que no hayan tantas construcciones.
Spain, which had a record number of tourist arrivals in 2024, expects even more visitors this year. The country has witnessed several protests against over-tourism in other popular holiday destinations, including Mallorca, Barcelona, and Malaga. Canary Island officials traveled this week to Brussels to seek European Union funds for affordable housing in the region's outermost areas. Tens of thousands of people protested in Budapest against a planned law that would allow the government to sanction NGOs and media it deemed a threat to Hungary's sovereignty. It is the latest move by Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who has already tightened control over courts, the media and civil society since returning to power in 2010. Critics say the proposed measures are part of a drive to clamp down on critical voices such as NGOs and independent news media. The bill would empower the government to blacklist organizations that threaten the sovereignty of Hungary by using foreign funding to influence public life. Groups listed as such would be barred from receiving donations through Hungary's annual 1% income tax contribution scheme, an important source of revenue for non-profits. A statement released by prominent rights groups including Amnesty International and independent media described the bill as an authoritarian attempt to retain power. The New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists called on EU leaders to unequivocally and immediately condemn the proposed legislation. Several people were killed and others wounded when a suicide bomber targeted an army recruitment center in Mogadishu. The Information Ministry said the attacker, disguised as a civilian, detonated explosives outside the Jero Damayo camp in southern Mogadishu at 9:20 a.m. Al-Shabaab group, which is linked to Al-Qaeda, claimed responsibility for the bombing. Egypt, which has close relations with Somalia, condemned the attack. Somalia has suffered a resurgence of attacks by Al-Shabaab in recent months. The group, which is fighting to overthrow the government, has intensified its campaign in the impoverished and climate-vulnerable country. There was widespread damage across parts of Kentucky after a powerful spring storm system triggered a series of tornadoes. Residents were seen beginning cleanup efforts, clearing debris from shattered structures left in the tornado's path. At least 17 people were killed in Laurel County, about 129 kilometers south of Lexington, when a twister touched down around midnight. Laurel County Sheriff described the devastation as a mass casualty event, adding there were numerous severe injuries and emergency crews were searching for survivors. Officers rescued a cat carrying 2 packages of drugs attached to its body at the Pocosi Penitentiary in Costa Rica. According to the penitentiary statement on Facebook, the alert officer spotted the black and white cat with grey patches in a green area of the prison. Upon capturing the feline, the officers discovered and removed the packages, which contained 235.65 grams of marijuana, 67.76 grams of crack paste, and 2 sheets of paper for making tickets. The drugs were confiscated and the cat, nicknamed Narcomichi on social media, was handed over to the National Animal Health Service for health evaluation. India's space agency failed on Sunday to launch an Earth observation satellite into orbit. V. Narayanan, the head of the Indian Space Research Organisation, said the first 2 stages of the launch performed as expected. However, the mission failed after a fall in the chamber pressure of the motor case during the 3rd stage. Narayanan said they would study the performance and provide details later. The launch took place at the Satish Dhawan Space Centre in Sriharikota, located in the southern state of Andhra Pradesh.
The second stage has commenced.
And in sports, Alcaraz ends Sinner's streak to win Italian Open. Stay with us. Kicking off our sports segment, Sporting Lisbon defended their Portuguese crown with a 2-0 win over Guimarães to hold off rivals Benfica on the final day of the Primeira Liga season. It was a tense match in the first half as both teams remained goalless until the half-time whistle. Things, however, took a turn when Pedro Gonçalves broke the deadlock in the second half to secure the lead for Sporting Lisbon. Then the division's top goal scorer, Victor Gyökeres, notched his 39th league goal of the stunning campaign to seal Sporting's victory. Manchester United coach Ruben Amorim led Sporting to last year's title after he departed in November, was replaced by João Pereira, who only lasted 6 troubled weeks before Rui Borges took over. Sporting claimed their 21st Primeira Division title and could make it a domestic double as they face Benfica next Sunday in the Portuguese Cup final. Sharjah FC ended Lion City Sailors' dream of becoming the first club from Singapore to win a continent-wide title, where they beat them 2-1 in the AFC Champions League 2 final. Playing in front of a capacity home crowd, Lion City had the early chances, but Sharjah took the lead in the 74th minute. Caio Lucas crossed for Khalid Ildandani, who pulled the ball back for Tunisian Firas Ben Alarbi to score for the UAE side. Sharjah looked to be heading for victory until at a time when Belgian Maxime Lechen fired in from the edge of the penalty area to draw the home side level. With extra time looming, Sharjah's Marcus Meloni found the corner of the net in the 97th minute from a tight angle to seal the match. And in tennis, Carlos Alcaraz won the Italian Open after beating Jannik Sinner in straight sets. Alcaraz fended off 2 set points late in the first set and then seized control at a tie-break before pulling away for a 7-6, 6-1 win. His 4th in a row over world number 1, Sinner. Alcaraz, who will climb to world number 2 behind Sinner, won his 3rd title of the season ahead of the French Open, which starts next weekend. The Spaniard snapped Sinner's 26-match winning run to claim his first Rome crown and 7th Masters 1000 title. He denied Italy its first male champion at the tournament since Adriano Panatta in 1976. Sunday's showdown could well be a prelude to the French Open final, with Sinner and Alcaraz set to be kept apart in the draw. The Spaniard claimed victory in his fourth final of the season and sent a clear message that he is near the top of his game, going into the year's second Grand Slam. And on to golf. World number one, Scottish shuffler, captured his third major title on Sunday, dueling Spain's Jon Rahm down the back nine in the final round to win the PGA Championship by 5 strokes. 28-year-old Scheffler collected his third major title with an even par 71, finishing at 11 under 273, while fellow Americans Bryson DeChambeau, Harris English and Davis Riley tied for second at 6 under. Scheffler squandered a 5-stroke edge, Rahm briefly tying him for the lead, but a birdie at the par 5 10th lifted Scheffler back in front to stay. The 28-year-old Texan took control with birdies at 14 and 15, while Rahm's closing woes secured Scheffler the Wanamaker Trophy, his first major win outside of Augusta National. Scheffler took home a $3.42 million top prize for a record $19 million purse. In Formula One, Max Verstappen took a dominant victory at Imola to celebrate Red Bull's 400th Grand Prix and end Formula One leader Oscar Piastri's run of 3 wins in a row for McLaren. Australian Piastri started on pole and finished third, overtaken by teammate Lando Norris with his championship lead cut to 13 after 7 rounds. The victory was the 65th of Verstappen's career, second of the season, and the 4-times world champion's 4th in a row at the Italian circuit near Bologna after wins in 2021, 2022 and 2024. Piastri had started the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix as favourite but lost out as Verstappen went around the outside into turn 1 on the opening lap and pulled away. A virtual safety car halfway through the race also worked against him. A late rail safety car bunched up the field, but Verstappen, now only 9 points behind Norris, was never in any real danger from the McLarens and took the checkered flag 6.109 seconds clear of Norris. Still in motorsport, 8-time world champion Sebastian Ogier chalked up his 63rd victory of his WRC career in the Rally of Portugal, the 5th of 14 rounds of the World Championship. The 41-year-old French Toyota driver finished 8.7 seconds ahead of Hyundai's Otanak, with Ogier's Finnish teammate Kalle Rovanperä completing the podium, a further 3.50 seconds behind. Ogier's win means Toyota have a 100% record in the first 5 rallies this season. Filling out the top 5 were reigning world champion Thierry Neuville and Japan's Takamoto Katsuta, while championship leader Evans could only finish 6th. Ogier spent a long time trailing in the rally behind Tanak before hitting the front late on Saturday when the Estonian suffered a mechanical problem. He went into Sunday's race with a 20-second advantage and was able to take control to claim his 3rd podium in 3 races this season. Evans still tops the standing with 118, but Rovanperä's 3rd place means he is now just 20 points adrift on the Welshman. Ogier a further 2 points back in 3rd. And in cycling, Wout van Aert snapped a dry run by winning stage 9 of the Giro d'Italia as Mexican rookie Isaac del Toro took the overall race lead after coming an agonizing 2nd. For the 21-year-old del Toro racing in his first Giro, this was a landmark performance that puts the UAE rider on the cycling map after he and Van Aert dropped everyone else. Italian Giulio Ciccone was 3rd, 58 seconds down, while title pretenders Richard Carapaz, Simon Yates, Antonio Tiberi, Juan Ayuso, Egan Bernal and Adam Yates were all around a minute adrift. For Van Aert, it was a long-awaited 50th win, and the Belgium lay gasping on the floor of the medieval square. Van Aert and Del Toro broke free from Bernal with 30 kilometers to go. Van Aert refused to work with Del Toro, who did most of the work over the final kilometers, possibly costing him the stage win on his big day. Pre-race favourite Primož Roglič was involved in a crash and also suffered a puncture to lose valuable time in the general classification, dropping to 10th overall, 2 minutes and 25 seconds behind Del Toro.
Super GT 2025 Series dengan 8 siaran langsung perlumbaan. Pusingan 1, 13 April dibawakan dari Litar Okayama International Circuit. Pusingan 2, 4 Mei dibawakan dari Litar Fuji Speedway. Pusingan 3, 28 Jun dibawakan dari Litar Sepang. Pusingan 4, 3 Ogos. Pusingan 5, 24 Ogos dibawakan dari Litar Fuji Speedway. Pusingan 6, 21 September dibawakan dari Litar Sportsland Sugo. Pusingan 7, 19 Oktober dibawakan dari Litar Autopolis. Dan pusingan 8, 2 November dibawakan dari Litar Mobility Resort Montegi di saluran sukan RTM. Juga secara penstreaman langsung di RTM Click.
76 minit tanpa henti.
76 minutes non-stop.
Transparent and concise.
Paparan komprehensif, ringkas dan padat. Saksikan Kanta 744, 7.44 malam. Berita perdana 8 malam.
Malaysia tonight, 8:30 p.m. With that, we conclude this edition of World Today. In our top story, limited aid followed into Gaza to help Israel expand ground operation. Till then, I'm Brendan Leopold from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Thanks for watching. Take care.